I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the 7 seals. Then I heard one of the 4 living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. When the Lamb opened the 2nd seal, I heard the 2nd living creature say, "Come." Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth, to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword. When the Lamb opened the 3rd seal, I heard the 3rd living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. And he said, "2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages." When the Lamb opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a pale horse, and the riders' names were Dawkins, Dennett, Harris, Hitchens. Hey gang, it's your old pal Black Swan. Welcome back to my channel. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the Four Horsemen of New Atheism. And I thought we'd have some fun, and I would talk about who I would nominate to be my Four Horsemen of New Atheism. Now, of course, I'm using terms like New Atheism and New Atheism rather facetiously. These were pejorative terms that were concocted by journalists to try and paint in a negative light the movement that started primarily with Sam Harris, especially after 9/11, where louder, more, shall we say, abrasive voices came out, and where theology and Christianity especially were aggressively challenged. And the conversation was moved out of academic circles and into the public sphere in a way that I think it really hadn't ever before. Remember, this was the advent of the rise of the internet and the explosion of social media outlets. So a lot of these had the opportunity to get more exposure than they ever had in the past, and more broad exposure than they ever had in the past. So I'm going to start by reviewing the original Four Horsemen, and then I'm going to talk about my own nominees for the new Four Horsemen and why I think they're important. So, where to begin? Where else to begin but with the Pope of Atheism himself, Richard Dawkins. Now, Richard Dawkins, like all of the new atheist Four Horsemen, is a mixed bag. The man really should not be allowed anywhere near a Twitter account. He's just doing himself zero favors by tweeting, and he's got himself in a little bit of trouble. He has some really eccentric views. His abrasive, harshly critical attitude definitely brought him notoriety. It's not just an attitude. This is intentional on Dawkins' part. He was intending to be provocative. And one of the things that really bugs me sometimes that he does is he'll make these incredibly provocative statements, like that long rant at the beginning of the God Delusion. And then when people get upset with that, he'll just try and laugh it off and go, "Oh, I don't know what you're being upset about. That wasn't really provocative," he would say. And it feels rather disingenuous on his part. What Dawkins contributed for me, how he influenced me, was getting me to ask questions I had never thought to ask before. He's not the first reason I did this, but he definitely expanded my view a lot. and got me asking questions, again, like I said, about my own faith that I hadn't thought to ask before, very specifically. He is the poster child for atheism. He's nicknamed the Pope of atheism because theists try to place him in that position for atheists. He's got a huge following. There's no doubt about that. There's a great size-wise, great power-wise. I don't mean great as in good. Cult of personality surrounding him because he's very well-spoken. He's very charismatic. But he does not serve as our leader, and that's, boy, it bugs me when that gets tossed around. But it's just not reality. A lot of people, a lot of atheists criticize Dawkins very directly and very pointedly, and it's criticism that's well earned. But he did contribute that for me anyway, getting me to think in new ways. Dennett, I am not as familiar with his work. I've seen the one, TED Talk or Freethinkers Association talk that he did about consciousness. I haven't read his books, and I haven't listened to much more of him than that, obviously, other than the round table with the Four Horsemen, which is where they picked up their name from. So he hasn't had as big a personal influence on me. A sip of water. Now, Harris, Sam Harris, my goodness. Talk about your mixed bags. It's my perception of the situation that Harris and Dawkins and Hitchens especially were really spooked by the events of 9/11. Who of us wasn't? In Harris's case, that metastasized into a deep Islamophobia. He blamed the entirety of that event on Islam as a force, on the religion, the entirety of the religion itself. And he has pursued that ever since then. I think he has a very warped idea of Muslims, and he's got a very warped idea of Islam, I think. He portrays it as this ultra-violent religion that doesn't have space for peace or peaceful cohabitation. In reality, it's no more violent than any other big religion, or I hate to say not more violent than any religion, because Buddhism certainly is not a violent religion, and I don't feel like Hinduism probably is, but I don't know enough about it. But certainly it's no more violent than any other great monotheistic traditions. What I do really like about Harris's work is his exploration of questions around consciousness and the metaphysics of identity. Those are really interesting topics to explore, and I love the deep dives. I mean, one of my favorite quotes from him was during one of his talks, I think with a clergy member. And he said, we have this idea of consciousness being like this little person, this man riding a boat down in a river, when in reality all there is the river. And it just speaks to me. I like a lot of that. I have read his books, The Moral Landscape. I don't really agree with everything he says in there. And Waking Up I have read. And this is the other thing about Sam Harris. If you ever read Waking Up, let me tell you, his affluent white privilege just drips off the pages of that book. My goodness. There's one comment he makes early on, one section where he's talking about sitting in a cafe in New York City, writing on his laptop, writing the book. And he talks about all the suffering that rich people have in their lives. And I know he's traveled and he's seen suffering, but frankly, I don't think he's lived it. It doesn't show, because when you've lived it, it shows. And I don't mean that as a pejorative. Good on him for having an affluent, rich life and having money. And I think in his own way, trying to do good in the world. But I think he lacks a self-awareness at times. And now, of course, on to what I think is the greatest of the Four Horsemen, Christopher Hitchens. It is deeply, deeply sad that he was taken from us at such a young age. He was an artist, and his medium was the English language. He had a lightning fast, razor sharp wit, and a tongue that was wicked in the most beautiful way. A lot of times, his wit and his satire, if you watch his debates and discussions, style definitely takes precedence over substance. And there are times where I see that, and it's funny because he was a brilliantly funny man and just had the most wonderful way of speaking. If you are like me, then you could happily sit and listen to Christopher Hitchens read from a phone book, and you know it would take him 20 minutes to get through the first two entries because along the way he would digress into these anecdotes about his time in Beirut or New Zealand, and you will have heard them 100 times before, but you will still sit and listen enraptured as he tells them again with whichever slight changes he adds this time. He was a beautiful human being, without a doubt. His greatest contribution to me personally was the way he would traipse around the world just gleefully butchering sacred cows. And when you come from a tradition and a society that teaches you that there are some things that are just not ever questioned, there are taboos and things that are never challenged, to watch someone go around and eviscerate some of those things so openly and to just shred and tear down these taboos, it's liberating in an unprecedented way. Rest easy, Hitch. You gave a great gift to the world, and I'm sad you're not still around. What can I say? Now, on to the new atheist Four Horsemen. And I need to address what's going to quickly become the elephant in the room here. Yes, all Four Horsemen on my own personal list are white guys. And I recognize there are a lot of diverse voices in the atheist community that could easily get put on this list. There are women, there are non-binaries, there are non-white. There's a lot of very deserving people. The people I put on this list are on there for two reasons. One, I think they were or are doing seminal work, very important critical work for atheism, for the conversation, for the dialogue, for the movement. And they each also touch me personally in some special and important way. Yes, they're all white guys. The conversation has been dominated by white voices, white male voices, for a long time, and that's changing now. And I celebrate that change. I welcome it. I definitely go out of my way to try and track down people of color, people who aren't white guys who are talking. And I've subscribed to their YouTube channels. I watch their videos when I can. I try and read some of what they write. It's very important to have them. But this is my own list for people that mean something to me. So let's get talking. Now, the first two people on this list could very well be seen as transitional figures because they've been in the conversation for a long time. Matt Dillahunty is the first one I'm going to talk about. And in many ways, he's not quite one of the new atheists. In many ways, he is very much one of the older new atheists. He can come across as sarcastic, condescending, and arrogant. There's no doubt about that. He can also be very tempered, very thoughtful, and very respectful. A lot of it depends on the situation that he's in. I highly recommend watching the 4 videos, and I'll try and remember to put either a card or a link down below, of his debate with this fellow in Christchurch. I think his name was Israel. I can't remember right now off the top of my head. It is a masterclass in counter-apologetics 101. And throughout the entire debate, he is courteous and respectful towards his interlocutor and towards the members of the audience and towards the church as a whole. It is well worth watching at any time. What Matt Dillahunty personally has given me is his interrogations and thoughts on the questions of morality. When you are raised, at least in the great monotheistic traditions, you are taught from the start that God is morality. He's the source of morality. His nature is morality. He is the measuring stick by which all moral questions are measured. And when that gets taken away from you, and I know I've talked about this in at least one other video, you kind of feel like a boat without an anchor or without a compass. You're a little lost, unguided, and you're not quite sure where the firm foundation is. And you should watch his video on the superiority of secular morality. Again, I don't agree with everything that's in it. I think there's a lot of nuance to be had, but it really is a great piece of work and well worth a watch. The other thing that I think Matt Dillahunty has really contributed to the atheist movement, he's been doing this for so long and thinking very critically and carefully and logically about it. And he has managed to condense and refine a lot of the ideas around the conversation about atheism and theism into very focused points. And I think that's very important. It can get misused. People can use them as talking points, and that's not very helpful. But I think a lot of what he's done is very helpful. Again, mixed bag. I mean, a lot of his approach, I don't want to scold someone for something they do or who they are or how they act. So that's, I mean, saying I don't approve of it really isn't the right thing to say. But it certainly isn't an approach I would take, and I think it can be difficult at times. Sip of water time now. Ha. Now, the second person on my list, and these aren't in any particular order, well, the last one will be. I don't think that Seth Andrews will in any way be insulted if I say that he takes second fiddle to Christopher Hitchens for the most beautiful speaker on this list. It is a very close second fiddle. Seth Andrews' voice is like smoky honeyed coffee pouring from a warm urn. It's magnificent. I feel a special kinship to Seth Andrews, if that's not too familial a word to use here. He and I are of a very similar age. We're almost exactly the same age. So we were both Christian teenagers during the height of the satanic panic. And we have a lot of shared experience around that. Whenever he talks about what it was like for him growing up as a Christian and as a youth and young adult as a Christian, and the types of music that he listened to, and the same propaganda that he was fed, the same fears, the fears about the accidentally blaspheming, or the fears about the tribulation and the left behind stuff. That's so familiar. It speaks to me in a very deep way. And that is a very important part of why Seth's work really touches me. The thing that Seth is doing right now, especially, and this is another video that you absolutely need to watch. If you never watch any other video that I reference you to, you need to watch this one. Recently, especially recently, Seth has put out a call for civility in public discourse, and especially civility in our discourse in social media, like on Twitter and Facebook. The mob mentality of the internet is terrifying at times and dangerous and destructive. And it's important for us. It's so important for us to not wake up this way, to be better than this. And it's so easy to do. And I find myself, especially in my interactions on Twitter, it moves so fast and you're so quick to come back with the snarky responses. And there are times where that's just not what is appropriate. We need to do better. And this Seth's message on civility, on discourse, especially online, is, as far as I'm concerned, the most important message of our day. There is nothing more important right now than learning how to be Emily Post with each other as we interact online and not be aggressive and not be demeaning and not be violent. To learn that just because there's this facade of anonymity when your direct name isn't necessarily attached to something, it doesn't give you license to wound other people that way. And we don't need to be that way, and we can be better than that. And that, boy, that speaks to me so much. Seth, thanks for all that you do. You're amazing. Now on to the last two on my list, and these are very much new atheists. And the first one I want to talk about is my man Vice Rhino. And he has a fantastic dad sense of humor. I hesitated to watch his videos at first because he did the cartoon Avatar, and that seemed kind of weird to me because all of the videos I had watched before that were people speaking, and it actually kind of put me off for a long time. But I'm so glad I finally did pick up his channel and start watching it. It is one of my don't miss an episodes. He's one of the few people I support on Patreon. I think his work is fantastic. His biggest contribution, I think, has been his incredibly detailed and incredibly academic response to creationism and anti-evolution science denial. This obviously is an area of deep interest to his. He does not have a professional science background, but he has taken the time to deeply educate himself. And his videos, I think, are some of the finest that are out there now, dealing with creationists and creationism. He is almost universally respectful towards the people that whose videos he's talking about. And this is one of the hallmarks of new atheism, is that change in tone of the conversation. And he has certainly been a part of that. Not that he can't be snarky, and not there are times where he calls out bullshit, because he does. Especially when people are dangerous that he's talking about, or when they're being liars or disingenuous. This is one of the things. He says he very much hesitates to call people liars. And there are a lot of other people that will do it. I mean, speaking of the anti-creationist, anti-science group, I mean, Arun Ra has done a massive body of work. But he is very harsh, and he's quick to call people liars and attack their character. And my man Vice Rhino doesn't do that. And I really appreciate that about his work. Definitely check out his stuff. Oh, and also, of course, he's a massive Doctor Who fan. I actually did fan art for his channel really quick. I mean, how can you hate someone that's that much of a Doctor Who fan, honestly? One more sip of water. And now, on to my fourth horseman. And it's this guy. No, not that guy. This guy. Yeah, Paulogia. Okay, Paul, you can be in here too. In my opinion, for whatever it's worth, Paulogia is the finest counter-apologist out there online right now, bar none, hands down, for a couple of different reasons, at least two different reasons. First of all, he takes the material very seriously. He studied ancient historical literature. He studied the history of the church. He studied the people who developed the church. He studied source material. He has really honestly investigated this stuff. And the work that he has put out is the most academically sound as far as I'm concerned. And it's really fantastic. And it's really brilliant. And you must watch it. One of his videos, I will link or whatever to, is his How Christianity Started Without a Resurrection, which is a fantastic piece of work. And I think from an academic standpoint, from an intellectual standpoint, he's just not slinging around catchphrases. He's not slinging around put downs. He's not going for cheap, low-hanging fruit. He is really looking at this stuff and really investigating it and giving it its fair due. And I think it's just brilliant work. The second thing about Paulogia's work that I think is fantastic is the level of respect that he brings towards the people that he talks with, or talks about, towards the video that he does, and in his interactions with theists online. Again, hands down, nobody beats him in this category. He has been so respectful that he has had Phil Vischer on his videos, the guy who created VeggieTales. He got Eric Hovind. He interacted with him directly and had him on one of his videos where he went and talked with Eric in one of his web seminars. I hate the word webinars. Just a lot of respect. And again, a note back to the academic quality of what he's doing. William Lane Craig responded to Paulogia's videos, which were responding to Craig's videos. And Craig rarely does this. Like, he would not debate Matt Dillahunty because he wanted like some academic thing he was claiming for. He doesn't always respond. He doesn't respond to the general online YouTuber or whatever. And Paul's work he responded to. And that says a lot about the academic quality of Paul's work as far as I'm concerned. The part about Paul's work and presentation that really touches me personally is about intellectual honesty. This came up recently when Capturing Christianity accused him of intentionally manipulating clips that he had put in videos to make it look like people held positions that they didn't really hold. And in Paul's response video to that, he talks about the importance of intellectual honesty to him. He lost a lot when he left Christianity, when he stopped believing. He lost his community. He lost his whole family. He went through some really difficult times, and all he was left with, as he mentions, was his intellectual honesty. And that speaks very deeply to me, because for me, it was my intellectual honesty that drove me to question my own Christian beliefs. I've talked about this in another video, but the path away from theism and from Christianity for me started with questioning alternative healing things, and then psychics and palm reading and dowsing and all this other stuff, astrology, all of that stuff I was questioning, and it was all turning out to be more and more just complete garbage and bullshit. And then I came up against my own faith beliefs, and I couldn't make a special pleading exception. My own intellectual honesty drove me, it compelled me to question those beliefs that I cherished deeply and believed so deeply. So that is a very important thing to me. I have such a hard time with intellectual dishonesty. It really bothers me, and it's something, it just feels like I can't do in my own life. I need to be intellectually honest to myself. That the very famous line from Shakespeare, of course, this above all else, to thine own self be true. Just feels like a mantra to live by for me. Anyway, that's why Paulogia stuff is so important to me, and that's why he's made my list of my Four Horsemen for new atheism. Anyway, there are dozens, if not hundreds of other people that are deserving to be on a list of the new Four Horsemen. So if you agree or disagree with anything I have to say here, let me know in the comments. If you think I've misrepresented anybody, let me know down in the comments. Speak up. Tell me who your Four Horsemen would be. Maybe you'll turn me on to somebody I've never seen before. That would be awesome. If you liked the video, thumbs up. If you didn't, thumbs down. It's okay. I won't judge. Be safe out there. Be kind to one another. And I'll see you all next time, okay? Peace out.